So my name is Joseph Obo. I'm not scared to share my age. I was born February 15, 1984. By the grace of God, I'll be 41 years old by next month on the 15th of February. It feels like I'm young, but sometimes I feel like I'm very old because I can see that maybe we might have, do we have any 16-year-old here? 15. Is there 15 here? Don't be shy. Is there 15? Anyone 15 here? 14. I know there's no 13, there's no 12. 17. Awesome. 18. 19. 20. At least by 21, people are already graduating, right? You know, I'll tell you a very short story about myself. I was like a black sheep, right? I was like a black sheep in my family. I have 5 sisters and I have a brother who is the last. And growing up as a child, there were crazy things that I was just a very abnormal child. Everything that was wrong, I tried to get my hands involved in things that were not normal. Before I was 11 years old, I think I had a spare key to my house. So even when my parents felt that they locked the door and I needed to go and play football, I just deploy my spare key, I go out, I play soccer, I come back. And most times when I get back, they are waiting for me in the parlor, you know, how did you go out and stuff like that. So I went through that whole phase, got into the university. I was a total introvert in the university. Even though I had 5 sisters, I was very shy when it came to talking to ladies, talking to girls. I'll be in school. I can't maintain eye contact with a lady. I would always try to keep my eyes down and things like that. So 200 level in law, I said, no, I can't live my life like this. I need to do better. I need to just do better. And the easiest way for me to achieve that was to go into politics. That's school politics. I don't know if you have that here. Yeah, so we had this law students association in school then, and we had a house of parliament, like a real parliamentary building, you know. Then we also had a court system. I was not really keen on being an advocate in school, so I joined the parliament. I ran for office and I won. And I won first 200 level, 300 level. I was very involved in political activities. I talk, I make speeches. I just do a lot of movement, move around and all that. And in 400 level, I said to myself, like, what's the essence of having gone through all of this talking without becoming the president of my faculty? And I called one of my friends, Ken. I said, Ken, I want to run for LOSA president. And I was like, I think you can make it. Like, you have the Christian guys behind you. You have, like, some other groups like that would support you. And I'm like, no, I don't want to run as a Christian candidate. I want to run as somebody that is with the people. So we came up with a plan. I had to start attending lectures of 100 level students. I would just be in their class. A lecturer might stand up and like, what are you doing here? At least that has given me some level of publicity. So I ran for office. I won 53% of the votes and all of that. I'm saying all of this to say one thing, that everything that you can think about is actually possible. My session here today has to do with mind transformation. Your ability to take charge of your life here first. I know many of us come from different backgrounds, and it will shock you that not everybody here is going to work maybe for the government, for example. Not everybody here is going to be a business person. Not everybody here might step out of the university and maybe have that very plum job and be so excited and, you know, start making money almost immediately. We're all going to experience different levels of growth and different levels of development. Does that make sense? So I've come up with something I want to title Your Life Plan. I'm not necessarily going to be talking about how you are going to determine what to do part-time and all of that, no. But I'm just here to tell you that everybody's life is in a sequence. We live life in a sequence. I expect that when you're 12 years old, you do the things that 12-year-olds do. When you're 16, you are advancing. When you're 21, people begin to now start thinking of, okay, this guy should start becoming responsible. When you get out of the university system, You wouldn't want to find yourself in that place where you are still call it dependent on your parents. And I would say why. The Nigerian system has taught us to over-rely on support systems. I remember when I had the privilege of going to Scotland for my master's. I served in the National Assembly, and one day my boss, after I finished my service, he's like, okay, what do you want to do? I said, okay, can I work with you? And he's like, okay, I'm not going to pay you. He was a parliamentarian, Honorable Eseme Ibo, and he said, okay, come and work with me. He wasn't necessarily paying me salary, right? I wasn't earning anything. But he can say, okay, take this 5K. I had one, is it 306 I was driving then? It wasn't my car, it was my father's car. So I was using that 306, having that belief system of, okay, I've become a man of my own, but on the basis of the things that my parents owned, which itself, it's like a wrong mindset. I did all of those things. You drive around National Assembly, you attend meetings. It appears that you are a big boy, but in the real sense of it, you are not, because it could be that it's your dad who is the big person and not exactly you. And that took me through a lot of seasons, and I learned so much from my mentor, Eseme. And one of the greatest things that he did for me, that I already had in me, was my ability to write. I know how to write. I know how to write in a political sense. If you need a letter maybe to a president, I'm your guy. I can write. I know how to use those kind of words, and I can put words together to make sense. So he took me on a journey of mentorship. I'm going to be scattered a bit, but at the end of the day, I will tie up everything I'm actually trying to convey to you guys today. He took me on that journey of mentorship. He taught me a lot of things. I would write a lot of letters. He would tear it in my face. Honorable Seme would tear it, because I'm going to send him this video. He would tear it in my face. He would bin it. He did that a lot of times. He would send me for meetings. I would prepare his memo. He's supposed to speak at those meetings. He would say, okay, you go first. I would wrap up. And this is just somebody that just left youth service, you know. And he took me through a lot of trials. He tested me with money. He would say, okay, go to my room. There is money somewhere on the bed. Pick this amount of money, and the money is scattered. You know, so that temptation of, okay, even if I add one more piece, he might not really know, was actually there. But of course, I was raised well to that extent. And one day, after a long period of time, about 6 months, he said, okay, do me this letter. I want to write a letter to Dimeji Bankole. That was the former Speaker of the House of Reps at the time. And I wrote the letter, and I was expecting him to tear the letter. He didn't tear it. He said, this is beautiful. This is really good. And for me, that was like the first time that I had that self-belief in myself to be able to do something at that level. And sometimes he has meetings. He will send me for meetings. He doesn't need to be there. So I began to build my capacity. And one day he came to me and he said, I don't want you to remain in this National Assembly space. What do you want to do? And I was like, I would like to do my master's, right? You know, and I told him that. And he said, okay, which schools are you considering? I said, okay, right now, the only school I can think of was a school I knew when I was in 100 level, 200 level. That's University of Hamburg in Germany. They had a program for telecommunications law at the time. So I wanted to do something related to telecoms law. But somehow, Germany was not on his own radar. So he's like, my son is in University of Glasgow in Scotland. Reach out to schools in Scotland and see how you can get a program. Then he said, okay, have you checked Strathclyde University? I said, no. He said, check that university out. And I checked the university out. They had a program on ICT and telecommunications law. I applied for the program. In less than 2 weeks, I had my admission. Then he's like, okay, how much is it going to cost? I think at the time, the school fees then was about £12,000. Then maybe upkeep a month is like about £800. Transportation, everything inclusive. And he writes me a check that would pay my entire bill for my master's education, my feeding, my accommodation, my transportation. Like, everything came to me on a platter of gold. Everybody here is not going to have that experience. But when I look back to 100 level, I was always thinking of having to do something in telecommunications, for example. I had that dream. I always talked about it, you know, and 6 years down the line, I talked to a school and they have that particular course. So it just tells me that what you think of in your mind, it's actually possible. I will tell you another story. The story of how how we built our first house. Before I got married to my wife, she's my wife, Juliana, she's a lawyer as well. Please, you can give her a round of applause. She's looking good. We have 3 children. I think my first daughter is 8 years old, right? Going to 9. Yeah, so I used to live in a place in Gwarimpa. When I came back from the UK, I worked in a bank for about 4 years. I came back to Nigeria, and the fact that I actually came back, somebody promised me a job in NASDA, this airspace development agency. He said, okay, what are you doing in the UK? I was working in a bank then, and working in the UK was very stressful. Your lifestyle is just, you are working, it's just work, house, church. Then you're looking for overtime so that you can make a whole lot of money. Maybe you want to do like a European tour, travel across Europe. You needed money to do all of that and things like that. So I just kind of got tired of that whole scenario. And one day I said to myself, it's time to come back to Nigeria. I packed my bags, packed everything, came back to Nigeria on the promise of a job. And I went to meet the guy who promised me a job. In fact, he told me that my letter was already on his table. Do you get it? You can see that kind of level of witchcraft, right? Like, I'm on my banking job in the UK, and somebody's like, okay, NASDA has just opened something beautiful in Nigeria. You know, with everything that you've done in the UK, you will come back here. The job is waiting for you. But he didn't have my letter of employment. He was employing every other person. This guy was like family. Actually, he's somebody very close. He's actually family, you know, and when he pulled that stunt, you know, it had the ability to destroy everything that I had been building over the years. I was thinking, okay, if I get into NASDA 3 years down the line, maybe I get a leave, I go back to the UK, do my PhD. Like, I had all my plans, like everything set out. And the NASDA dream was totally broken. The dream was off the table. And I began to ask myself, like, you can't tell me you have my appointment letter. I take a flight from the UK back to Nigeria. I come to your office, then you are telling me that there is no legal department in your organization. It just goes to tell you that some people might make you promises that they would never keep, right? That's actually how life works, you know. It's not everybody's promise that they keep at the end of the day, and you must have that open mind to be able to determine for yourself what you want from life, and also stick to that plan. I didn't lose hope. I went back to my boss who sponsored me to the UK. He's currently the SA media to Godswill Akpabio presently. And he was like, okay, there's an opening in India. Are you interested? I'm very interested, so I would like to go to India for studies. I go to India, telecommunications management. I come back to Nigeria. Okay, there's another opening in South Korea. Are you interested? I'm very interested. I would like to go to South Korea for another program. I go to that program, public sector management. I come back to Nigeria. But he's like, with everything that I've helped you become, I don't see myself helping you to get a job, right? I don't think what I owe you is a job. I've done so much for you, young man, for God's sake. You need to now rise up to do something for yourself. So I was thinking to myself, should I go back to the UK and, you know, just see how I can start my life over and all of that? Then a job comes up. My dad is like, you've been roaming around the world. You've done a lot of travels and all that. If you don't settle down to get married now, it might take you maybe like another period of time before you start thinking about that. So somehow, he gets me a job with the National Human Rights Commission. National Human Rights Commission, banking, telecommunications, IT, like there's no connection, right? Then I go into National Human Rights Commission. My story is going to tie up at the end of the day. I go into Human Rights Commission with a lot of beautiful ideas, but ideas necessarily don't rule the world, right? It can rule the world maybe in a structured private entity, but when you are working in a government establishment, you know, and your director has his own ideas, your ES, they have their own, everybody has their own ideas. So you that are just coming in maybe level 10, then you now want to start coming up with ideas that people that are almost 60 years old are going to use to run with. Nobody ran with those ideas. Beautiful ideas, but that was not necessarily the place for those ideas to work. So the goal basically is that your ideas may not find roots in everywhere. I'm sure there are some ideas that some of us have here that might be very useful to Bingham University. You may have even shared some of those ideas, but this might necessarily not be the place for you to share those ideas. There would be a place and a time for any ideas that you have to find expression. But the beauty about it basically has to be that you are the kind of person that is given to improving yourself. Because the way I look at it, the advantage basically is that if you work on yourself, it will be obvious, one, in the way you write, two, in the way you talk. There used to be a story of this guy in university then, and I think a couple of guys were gisting, and the guy's girlfriend shows up, and the dude is like, they were talking about Saddam Hussein at the time, Saddam Hussein, and somebody now, they were just talking, and the girl was like, who is Saddam Hussein? Like she didn't know who Saddam Hussein was. Who is Saddam Hussein? Do you guys know who Saddam Hussein was? He's dead right now. I think he was the guy that the Americans accused of having weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they waged war through a UN resolution, and at the end of the day, they went to Iraq, they bombarded the entire place, and they didn't find weapons of mass destruction. Tony Blair too was part of that entire effort, George Bush and all of that. You can read up on all that. It's just history. And, these kinds of conversations, there are places where you mention certain things, and somebody's like, this is the kind of person we want to work with. This person understands the language and all of that. So the guy had to break up with his girlfriend because she didn't know who Saddam Hussein was. I actually feel that he wanted to break up with her even before then, and he was looking for the perfect opportunity to say that this relationship is actually over. So back to my story. I get into Human Rights Commission. 2 years into Human Rights Commission, my spirit is like, you are done with this place. And why was I really done? There was one of my colleagues then who was like, because they didn't let us young staff, to park inside the premises. We used to park our cars outside. And the guy is like, one day, I'm going to park my car here as a director. And it didn't make sense to me. Like, how would you wait 30 years to have a parking spot, right? 3 decades of your life. You will keep that on hold just because you want to have a parking space in a building. It didn't make sense to me, and I began to think to myself, what necessarily can I do? I need to get out of this environment. And I say that with all due respect because I'm on record, I love Human Rights Commission. In fact, I'm so in love with that organization. I love you guys. I love the ES. I love what you do. I love everything that happens around the National Human Rights Commission. That's like a political response anyways. It took me an additional 6 years before I finally left the National Human Rights Commission. I spent roughly about 12 years of my life in a place that I shouldn't have spent more than 2 years. So that tells you that there was something faulty in my own decision. But another fact is that in the Nigerian setting, in the Nigerian setup, you don't just walk away from a government job, right? You have a government job. Like people see you like, man, you've arrived. But the things that I was able to do between 2 years of leaving the National Human Rights Commission, I may never have been able to do in 20 years of staying there. But that was my gamble. Not everybody would want to take that kind of a gamble. So what I've come here to tell you today basically is that you are at that stage of your life where you can make all the risks, you can take all the risks possible. I remember while I was in the university then, there used to be this guy, Alex Umole. He's a lawyer. He was my university mentor. We went to the same secondary school. He was at, that's Federal Government College, Kwali, Abuja. That was the school I went to. So Umole was the head boy. I was in, is it like 300, no, 311, no, JSS 3. Sorry. I was in JS 3, he was in final year. We ended up in the same university, and he was this orator. Like, he used to talk so well. Like, he was a sweet talker. He will represent our university then, that's Ambrose Ali University, in international competitions. He was the first guy that made it known to me that it was possible as a student to travel for things around the world, all expense paid. And he knew where to find all those information. So when he was leaving school, he now called me and said, Joe, come, I want to show you a few things. He said, this website, check this out. And I checked those things out, I checked all of those things out. And I was able to get a program in Humboldt University, an all-expense paid program on arbitration and alternative dispute resolution. That program was organized by Humboldt University and the Tulane Law School. But it will amaze you to note that backstepping on that story, there was a time in my life living in Lagos where I would leave my house. I would enter public transport to the airport, right? I would be inside the airport. My parents don't even know where I am in this world, though. Do you understand? I'll be in the airport, I'll be looking at people are traveling, planes are landing, other ones are taking off. I know that most of you here, like, UK is like your backyard, you travel across the world, you do all of those things. I fully understand that. But that was not my own experience, growing up. And when I now got to the point where Alex was like, you can do this all expense paid, I was like, wow, this is really nice. I've actually been thinking of having to even enter a plane in the first place. I've never been in an aircraft at the time. And the first time I would get on a plane was getting on a plane to Germany. And I was like, wow, it's not even local flight that I did. I did international flight. You understand? And at the airport, I'm just trying to tell you how that the thought processes that you have, they are actually correct. The things you think about, they actually happen. I'm not saying this on a religious platform, and it's actually true. If you want to be religious about it, it's true. The things you think about, they happen. The thought processes that you have, they are valid. They are very valid. If you see yourself as a grasshopper, for example, that's actually who you are. If you see yourself as a lion, that's actually who you are. If you think that something is possible, your mind will push you to the point where you are looking at what are 100 ways to make sure that this thing is actually possible. The mind is that powerful. And I got to Germany, got to Berlin, Warschauer Strasse. We got to the train station, and just coming down from the train station, a lady that I used to know while in Nigeria, her dad was an ambassador to Germany. As I'm walking down after the train station, we took a bus. As I'm walking down at the bus stop, somebody just calls my name from the blues, right? And the lady is like, Joseph. I wasn't sure it was me, right? But I just summoned the courage to look up. And I was like, Udwak, oh my God. How is it possible that this was somebody that, okay, I've never told my wife this, but I used to have feelings for Udwak on a low, just like, not like marital feelings, just like, Udwak is very beautiful, she's good looking, it would be nice to be Udwak's friend. But that kind of friendship that you cannot really say, I like you. You just enjoy the person's presence, you say hi, and you see in church, and you go back home, and that's it. It wasn't anything that wasn't pure. It was actually pure. I wasn't looking for anything. So I see Udwak in Germany, and Udwak is like, oh my God. And I'm even so scared. I'm like, what's really happening here? Then she's like, oh, my dad would like to see you. She gives me her address. 2 days later, I go to her father's house. I go to their house, eat a lot of afang soup and all that. And he buys a brand new digital camera. He hands it over to me. It was beautiful, right? I had thought about being on a plane. I had visited the airports. I have done that consistently. I have been so, it was like an obsession. And somehow, it happened. The house where I lived, like a BQ, a one-bedroom. Was it one bedroom? Room and parlor, right? Yeah, it was one room and parlor somewhere in Guarimpa. In that estate, everywhere is like a red roof. Like all the roofs were red there. And I'm like, one day I would like to have a red roof duplex, right? That was like my goal. Of course, I couldn't have done that with my human rights salary of 90,000 naira a month. So it was after I left Human Rights Commission, somehow somebody wanted to sell a land. Okay, my wife is like, we need to have a land. And I'm like, how are we going to have a land? Like, how much are we earning that we'll be thinking of buying a land in Abuja? And she's like, okay, you just find out now how much the lands cost. So I talked to somebody in church, and he's like, okay, there's a land somewhere in Dawaki. At the time, it was about 5.5 million naira. And I'm like, that's like My yearly salary, 70K, 75K times 12 months, is almost like maybe 1,050,000 naira a month. That means I'll have to work for 5 years without touching my salary to be able to afford that land. And of course, I have to eat. I fuel my car. I do a lot of all these logistics and all that. I take care of my wife. The money wasn't enough. But I stepped out in faith, right? My wife said it was possible that we can buy it. I'm like, okay, do you have money saved? Do you have money saved for us to buy the land? She doesn't really have money saved. So how do you buy land without money? So I talked to the guy. I'm like, I want to buy this land, but I just have 100K in my savings now. Can I pay you in 6 months? The guy is like, he has never heard where people are buying land in 6 months. So like, it doesn't actually make sense. It's either you have the cash on hand or you don't have the cash on hand. But he's like, okay, let me give you 5 months. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay you in 5 months. Then I send him the 100K. The time starts counting. I'm like, okay, my next salary is 75K at the time. It doesn't make sense. So I don't know how it happened, but somehow somebody gives me a call. The person's like, there's a Canadian company that does business in Nigeria. They want to move their money to Canada, right? Can you help them? I've never done it before. I'm like, yes, I can help them. I can help them. So I talked to a friend of mine who is a bank manager in Zenith Bank. The guy schools me on the kind of language because they were to have a meeting with me and I need to use certain words that will make them believe that I'm the right guy that they are speaking with. So he coaches me, tells me everything that I need to know. Then I go online, I check few things around CBN regulations, blah, blah, blah. Then we have the meeting with the guy, Ramin Mesgalu, and the guy is like, okay, we have a deal. He now asks me, okay, how much am I going to charge him? I said, okay, I will charge you, it's like 4.8 million or something at the time. So I'm like, sir, can you pay me 75% in advance? He's like, no. He's going to give me 50%. As he gives me that 50% like this, I just wire the money straight to those guys. Remember that I'm supposed to pay 5.5 million in 5 months, right? So I've already dropped a deposit of 100,000 naira. I've dropped another 2.4. This is like the second month. Then somehow, like, me that I don't even used to see like 100K on the normal, like money was just showing up from like different sources. I'm saying all of this to tell you that when you decide to take that leap of faith, right? When you are rugged about what you really want to do, because it didn't make any sense. How do you tie yourself to a contract of 5.5 million in 5 months with an income of 75,000 naira? Just think about it for like a few moments. I know that there are certain things that we have done here for those of us currently in this hall that you never really believed was possible, but you did it in any case, right? There are things that you're like, okay, this thing is not possible. Somehow, it happened that it became possible. You were able to achieve that thing that you set out to achieve. And we didn't pay for the property in 5 months. We finally paid for it in 6 months. And I'm almost done with my session. I'm almost done. It's a lot of stories, but I'm sure that you are picking the relevant things. And one of the relevant things for me, if I were to just plainly say what I've been saying all the while without having to tell any stories, is the fact that whatever you can think that is possible, even being here today, it started here. We have a goal. We want to visit 10 universities in 2025. And we've been to Bayes University last year. We've been to University of Abuja last year as well. And Usha here is a very close friend of ours. Usha is like, it's possible now, we can do 10. We can even go to schools in Benue State, we can go to Niger State. He just made everything look like very easy for us to achieve. And thinking of being here, started here. We didn't necessarily know what it would cost in terms of the budget to be here, but we're like, we're going to do this. And somehow, everything began to tie up. My friend who is behind the camera here, Mr. Gabriel, I only met Mr. Gabriel in January, right? In January, just about 2-3 weeks ago. We knew that we would have to do things around media here, but we didn't have like a producer. See, the beauty of the way the world works, it works for evil people the same way that it works for good people. somebody wants to go and carry out like a robbery operation, they have to think of it first. Is that not right? Then they start planning. But I'm not here to deliver a lecture on robbery, right? I'm here to just let you know that whatever dreams that you have, those dreams are possible and they are valid. But it's your job to really step out. So I would tie this up. We bought the land. After building the land, to start building the land and all that, they gave me the BOQ. I'm like, this bill of quantity, how are we going to do it? Then one day, my engineer calls me. He's like, Oga, we don't dig the place, so come and pay the boys. I'm like, dig the place, how? Did I ask you, because I gave you the drawing does not mean that, do you have the money to pay the boys? How do you go and dig somebody's land that has not asked you to start work? So I paid those guys. I went there, I paid them. We didn't stop on that project till we completed it. Because somebody was crazy enough. Of course, the guy needed money. But he put my own faith to work, to believe that whatever I had in my mind was actually possible. Last year, she had 2 trips last year. She was in Geneva last year. She was also in, is it California? You went to the Bond City, right? She was also there. And she was like, you two, you can travel out now. I'm like, how am I going to travel? I don't have the money to travel out. I don't have money to travel. How am I going to travel out? She's like, okay, you know these guys that it's one Korean agency. Why not tell the director there that you would like to go to Korea? And I'm like, okay, let me just even, she has been telling me these things since like January, February. So like in September, I walk up to the guy. I'm like, I would like to go to Korea. Like, can you guys give me like a training and fund it? Then he calls one of his staff. He's like, let me call the guy Mr. Lanre. He said, Mr. Lanre, do we have an opportunity in Korea that Mr. Joseph can go for? The guy is like, we can create room for him. In less than 2 weeks, my visa is ready. I'm on a plane to Korea. That's how I went to Korea. So I'm just saying that the thoughts that you are having in your mind, the fact that you leave them in your mind, the fact that you don't take actions on those thought processes that you have, is the reason why a lot of people would necessarily not make the move to where they are designed to be. And there's this scripture that talks about those who know their God shall be strong and they shall do exploits, right? So there are 3 keywords in that particular scripture. Those who do what? Those who know. Those who know are people that have knowledge. It therefore means that you must be a seeker. I'm not talking about being a seeker and maybe seeking for spirits and all that. No. I'm only saying that you must seek knowledge. The university system has some kind of knowledge that it delivers. And to a very large extent, you know, the knowledge is good, right? Like, what courses, like, are there lawyers here? There are lawyers here, right? Okay. I studied law. I started going to court. I went to court a few times, and I'm like, I can't put this wig on my head. I can't wear this thing. Like, it was like a burden for me personally. And I just knew that my goal in life was not to become a senior advocate of Nigeria. That's not my goal. I don't want to be a judge. I don't want to be a top lawyer. I don't want to be a SAN. I cannot even be a SAN. If you ask me now, open a law report, Nigerian Weekly Law Report, I may not even be able to search for it in a library. But I was a law student president of my faculty. Do you understand? So it's not every lawyer that will end up in court. When I have court briefs, I just call one of my guys, Ken, how far can you handle this? He say yes. Me, it's not my area, right? And it's really not my own purpose in life to be that kind of a person. So a lot of you here might not even use everything that you are waking up maybe 6 o'clock, attending lectures, 8 a.m. in the morning. You might not use any of those things. I've met people from Bingham University. I think I met a guy here the last time I was in this school, and he said he's into Forex. Another one is into car sales. People here are into a lot of things. One of the core members that worked with me recently, she owned like a thrift store. People do different things apart from, it's just like you studied zoology now, for example. Do you guys have zoology here? Thank God. Because I don't see the relevance of zoology, sincerely. Are there zoos is there a zoo in Nasarawa State? Is there a zoo in Abuja? Are you going to be looking after maybe termites, ants? What other insects do we have? House flies, mosquitoes, okay, zoology, like maybe dogs, cats, lions. There is really no basis for that. Like the world has moved beyond a lot of things. For me now, for example, I would only tell you that you have an opportunity to build the life that you want outside of school while you are in school. Don't wait till you get out of school, then you now get confused about life. Because it will happen. At a point, I was so confused that I started doing Kabu Kabu in Abuja. I don't know how that dropped, But I was like, man, I needed money. I was so arrogant. I was like, I can't be asking my dad for money. Which story am I going to tell him now? I'm not buying any textbook. I'm not doing any other thing. So I'll just take that, my trio, since I'll enter town, I'll pick passengers. Like, it's crazy, right? Just to survive, just to make ends meet. And on one of those occasions, I picked one guy from, I think it was around Central District. He was going to Nyanya or something. I now picked him on a drop. The money I even charged him was not enough for to even take me. At that point, I was like, no, I can't really do this anymore. I can't do this. This Kabu Kabu thing, I'm not cut out for it. And somehow, God has helped me to order my steps with knowledge. Knowledge is very important. I'm not talking of your school knowledge. If you are reading your school books for maybe 4 hours in a day, create like half of that time, spend it on something that you believe you truly want to walk into and become. Don't waste your time on cramming formulas and doing all of those. They don't necessarily work out that way in the real world, right? They don't work out. Nobody's going to ask you for any definition in the real world. I think the reason for education basically is just for the discipline. So knowledge is important, but knowledge alone is not important. Those who know shall be. With knowledge, you come into yourself. Okay, like there's something I do. I've worked for a lot of companies at the boardroom level. I provide boardroom services for companies. For me, it's just interesting. I do all of that. I'm very okay with that. It pays well, and the stress is less. Things of that nature. And I've worked in Human Rights Commission. Did about 12 years in all. So I'm like, okay, Human Rights Commission. I cannot waste that experience. The whole company thing that I do, I cannot also waste that. And there's this new concept in the development space. It's called business and human rights. Business and human rights, like it's funded by the United Nations. There are a lot of opportunities within that space, especially in Europe. But the African voices in that sector is very minimal. So I'm like, let me start doing stuff on business and human rights. I go into knowledge. I start studying. Right now, I've come into that place where even if the president were to be here, or maybe the UN Secretary General, I can address him on human rights and business issues. I can wake up 1 a.m., you ask me to give a lecture on that. I can talk till they will be tired of listening. So the knowledge is important. Then you becoming that thing that you desire to become, that is premised on knowledge. Because we're in the knowledge economy, a lot of things that will be happening in the world is knowledge-based. Just recently, I think Donald Trump, Sam Altman, this guy, Sunbank CEO, and Larry Page or so, they came together at the Oval Office in the White House, and Donald Trump, he announced the Stargate project. The Stargate project is an AI project of $500 billion, right? So that tells you that for the American government to begin to think AI, and they are willing to invest $500 billion, that is over 12 times Nigeria's foreign reserve, right? Our foreign reserve should be maybe like 39, 40. I don't know whether it's less, the way we are spending these days. But when you look at the way we are even borrowing, we are borrowing so much. Nigeria is in so much debt. I don't know. I don't want to talk about Nigeria here today. That's not why we are here. But the point basically is that the world is moving towards AI. And I believe that the AI that we know right now is not the AI that project is meant to deliver on. Because the guy from Sunbank, he said what they are looking at is super artificial intelligence. Something on a demonic level, I don't know if it's demonic, but something on a level that is astral, is beyond what our minds can currently conceptualize. So if you are that person that believes that artificial intelligence is not for you, there are some clients that call me up. Maybe I bill them like 150K. I'll just go to ChatGPT and some other AI stuff. In 3 minutes, I've delivered what I want to give to them, and I'm done. I'm done. I'm so done. So you might need to be asking ChatGPT the right questions, and it's also premised on knowledge. What is that area that you're passionate about? Have you become that person that people can begin to engage with? Then beyond that, those who know shall become and they shall do. How well are you doing? I think this is the part that affects everybody here. How well are you really doing the things that you need to do? Are you the kind of person that procrastinates? I think I'm a procrastination lord, but somehow I have a wife that kind of reminds me a lot that you need to do, because sometimes I'm like, what am I really doing all these things for, But I still have that drive. Most times I'm very driven to the glory of God, and I believe that it is in the doing. It's the doing that really matters at the end of the day. It's the doing that matters. I wrote an exam recently. We both did a master's in ABU. We just finished our exam last week. Is it International Affairs and Diplomacy, right? And you see people carrying chukuli, how is it possible that you can't even spend few hours to study? You want to be a diplomat, but you can't study. Like, what kind of diplomat do you want to become? Do you understand? They will ask you to go and negotiate a contract or go and negotiate something for Nigeria. Instead of you to be thinking of your country, you connive maybe with the other country to sabotage your country, because that's the only thing that you can do, because you don't have the skill sets to be able to hold your guns and say, this is where Nigeria is headed and we are going to stay the course on this part. You will say no. Like, if you look at some of the contracts that some people have negotiated for Nigeria, you will just realize that people make money from these things. Let's call the country Sango. Nigeria is doing like a contract with Sango, right? And in the international arbitration system, we can actually get a better deal. But you representing Nigeria, you tell Sango, don't worry, this Nigeria is already a messed up country. We are going to mess up this whole negotiation, but the way we'll mess it up and just keep something on the Sango side for me. That's what a lot of some people do when they are negotiating on behalf of their country. That's not the kind of diplomat that kind of diplomat is diplomat that will go into a hall and they will carry their phones, they will carry papers. It doesn't make sense. So do the work. Do the work. Become the best that you can become. There's this guy I listen to. I'm almost done. We'll just take Q&As like in the next 5 minutes or 2 minutes. His name is, there are so many of them, but let me just talk of Patrick Bet-David. He has a very similar story of somebody who came from a point of failure, like serious failure, immigrant guy coming into the United States, loves to party, loves to do a lot of crazy stuff. One day he decides that, to hell with his lifestyle. This is what I want to be. I want to own one of the best insurance companies in America. He starts out on that journey through mentorship and through apprenticeship, necessarily not thinking of money, but trying to really understand and know the space, have the knowledge, and be so good at what he's doing. Right now, he's a big boy. He interviewed Donald Trump on his podcast. That's the PBD podcast. You can check him out. He's an interesting guy that you can be listening to instead of watching. What's this guy? There's this Nigerian artist that is very popular now that has a lot of dreadlocks. That is from Edo State. Charlie Poppy, right? Do you guys know him? Instead of spending, I know you guys don't use phones here. Spiritually, you guys don't use phones. There are no spiritual phones here, but let's just assume that spiritually you don't use phones, But somehow you can tune into Charlie Poppy and you're having a great time. Instead of devoting that time to things that will not necessarily matter for you in the next 1 to 3, 4 years, why not ask yourself the question, what do I want to pursue when I leave Bingham University? Who can I pursue it with? Lastly, I want to go into the real estate space. I want to do a lot of things. I'm just going to share this. This is the last thing I'll say. I'm already out of time. And I do a video on investment due diligence. I post it on my Instagram page. Somebody from Ireland, I've never met her before. She watches the video. Oh, nice video. Then she calls me up. She's like, I would like to do XYZ in Nigeria, blah, blah, blah. Somebody duped me. My money is missing. I did some investment. I can't, in fact, the investment app, it has disappeared. It doesn't open again and all of that. I'm like, okay, let's go to SEC. We can find out a few things from SEC. We go to SEC. She pays me. SEC is like, this kind of investment is unsecured. There's nothing we can do about it. And I tell her, after a lot of back and forth, I'm like, okay, send me your account number. Let me refund you at least 50% since I couldn't deliver the job. She's like, oh, don't worry, it's okay, it's fine. Few months later, she wants to buy a house in Lagos. I'm not in Lagos, but she calls me. She's like, I'd like to buy a house in Lagos, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I can do it for you, why not? Don't forget that I can do all things, right? There's nothing, if you check my story, there's really nothing I cannot do. If you want to buy an aeroplane now, I can help you buy it. You know? So I call a guy in Lagos. Can you make this deal work? Do everything that you need to do in Lagos. Make it happen. I'm going to pay you. Which I did, and we sold the house. I got my fees, 5% legal fees on the cost of the property. And just from a video, right? A crazy video that even myself, it's not like the video really made so much sense. But that video was my introduction to somebody that is already thinking of, okay, are there other things that we can do? You're in Nigeria, I'm in Europe. Are there things that we can do together? So the point is this: you are not too small. That spiritual phone that you have, you understand? That spiritual phone that you have, you can make spiritual impact, spiritual money, spiritual everything. You can be doing all of those things. I'm not saying you have the physical phone. No, there are no phones. We don't use phones in this university. Phones are not allowed. But if you have a spiritual phone, you can deploy that to great things. You can deploy that to great things. Thank you very much for listening to my ramblings.